Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and while I have been up to my elbows in researching Yandere Dev and his game Yandere Simulator, I noticed a little dust-up occurring on Twitter surrounding the site Exclusively Games, and given the nature of what has been going on, I thought it important enough to warrant my weighing in on this particular topic. In full disclosure, last year I produced a total of 37 videos for the Exclusively Games YouTube channel. That series of videos was titled Line of Sight, and it was a weekly news roundup. In addition, I was paid for each and every video that was created by me under the Exclusively Games banner, so be aware of that, as it can quite easily create a monetary bias on my part. Also, as I know full well that there will be a great many people in the audience that don't personally care for Jeremy Hambly, also known as The Quartering, I would like to remind you that I am not here for personal biases in this situation. What I care about are the events themselves and their potential validity. And as I'm thinking of it, I am by no means a lawyer, and all of that legal mumbo-jumbo about my statements not constituting legal advice and such. I'm just a mook with a mic that knows how to Google and how to analyze and critique a situation. As many of you are aware, this video will obviously be about the website Exclusively Games and the website Exclusively Games. The original website was started by The Quartering and promised what the title implied, gaming news, without articles being written in a manner that promotes a political ideology, something that is quite common with legacy media these days. The site does not have advertisements and instead relied on crowdfunding and out-of-pocket expenses in order to both run the site, maintain it, and pay its writers for the articles published. In May of this year, it was decided upon that the site would be paused for a refactoring or scaling back due to the large amount of personal expense that was being incurred. New article submissions were stopped at the end of May, and not many people knew how long the site would be down for. The Quartering had expressed a desire for the site to start publishing new content again in November of this year. However, some disenfranchised fans of the site have decided to take it upon themselves to create their own gaming news website titled Exclusively Games, whereas the original site was .com, this fan-made site is exclusivelygames.net. Currently, the fan-made site is incomplete, showing only the forums and a single post made by the user Edgar. The impersonating Exclusively Games Twitter account, as seen here, uses the same banner image and branding colors as the original Exclusively Games Twitter as seen in this image. The impersonating EG, because that's just easier to say, also has their own Discord, which makes use of the original EG logo. Now, I say this because the impersonating EG site is clearly showing an intent here to capitalize on the Exclusively Games name in order to create the same basic services, a gaming news website. But the thing of it is clearly trademark infringement. However, as there seems to be a lot of bad information and advice floating around out there, I thought it best to help set matters straight. First is this handy bit of misinformation from the Discord user Tony. Bear in mind, this person did reach out to me via DM to clarify that they themselves are not involved with the impersonating site whatsoever. However, Tony seems to think that because they had registered the domain name of exclusivelygames.net, that precludes the possibility of this infringing on the original, which, again, is not at all the case. In fact, it's quite the opposite. The original site is exclusivelygames.com, a site that produces gaming news. The impersonation site is exclusivelygames.net and is a site that is intending to produce gaming news. That is clear and evident replication and does create brand confusion, particularly with the fact that while the logo on the site is different, it is the same color scheme, and many would likely interpret that to simply be a rebranding of the logo, at least in terms of trademark law. And then the second statement made by Tony, quote, "Why would you leave all that brand recognition on the table if it is fair to use?" Now, fair use is a very common concept in terms of copyright. However, fair use in terms of trademark is something very different indeed. And in trademark fair use, there are only two categories. The first is classic fair use, which refers to similar sounding descriptors of the mark, such in the examples listed for high grade. The second category of trademark fair use is nominative fair use, and it is where, for example, you use Coca-Cola's trademark and logos to refer to Coca-Cola themselves and their products. This is something that is seen in advertising all the time, such as the easily understood example listed with taste test advertisements between Coke and Pepsi products. And based on the two categories of trademark fair use, the impersonating EG does not meet either criteria. Of course, Tony continued with a rather foolish, incorrect, and extremely irrelevant argument of Jeremy didn't even have Exclusively Games' Twitter handle. Which, if he didn't have the Exclusively Games Twitter handle, what is this then? And why would that account have a Twitter join date of Tuesday, November 20th, 2018, I wonder? However, that is not the only foolishness to come out of this entire debate. The Impersonator EG posted a 5-part thread that is about as intellectually honest as one might expect. To everyone who crowdfunded, please remember what we are promised and how much money went in those crowdfunding rounds, plus his subscribe star, over 200,000 in total. That lasted a little over a year and staff were not paid. However, within the statement they themselves are showing, or citing, it states, quote, "By the 1st of June, I had 50 articles in their submitted, paid for, and waiting to be published pile." A rather troubling thing indeed, to see so many articles going unpublished and also see Exclusively Games taking no action on a YouTuber and Instagram influencer plagiarizing the articles, something that I personally would be very interested to learn more of so it can be properly investigated. However, it seems that this person in no way held any concern over payments not being made. Their concern was rather lack of notice, no official announcement, and the sheer volume of unpublished articles, no mention of the claims of lack of payment that are being alleged by the Impersonator EG. The quartering is still taking money from Exclusively Games supporters on his subscribe star for the total of $320 per month in his own personal pocket. We advise you, if you're still supporting EG on subscribe star, to cancel your support as soon as possible. $320 per month for a website where it is still intended to be brought back in some form or another later this year. A subjective coloring of things, I think, but I will leave that up to all of you to decide if it is fair or not in these circumstances. Staff were paid from a defunct company owned by the quartering that was dissolved in 2012. There is no company called Exclusively Games, there is no trademark, there is no copyright, there is company filings or company taxes paid, which by that I take it to mean that there are no filings or company taxes being paid. Which, there's so much wrong with this statement that it honestly hurts my soul a little bit. First off, it is rather common for PayPal account information to simply not be updated. It is a bit lazy, but it is something that I see all the time, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. The statement that there is no trademark is completely and utterly inaccurate. It would be more accurate to say that there is no registered trademark, but that does not mean that there is no trademark. Someone should really inform these people of what a common law mark is. You don't have to file a trademark registration in order to hold a valid trademark. Simply engaging in commerce is enough to establish a valid common law mark. There is no copyright, he says. Again, this is so idiotic that it hurts. Exclusively Games does indeed hold a copyright on the content that it published. There is no registration needed for such a thing, and to make such a statement is so lacking in intelligence that it's honestly quite baffling to me. There is no company filings or company taxes paid. How would you know? Have you spoken with their accountant? Have you seen their internal company books? That is the only way you would be able to make that sort of determination. Basing all of these accusations based on the quartering not updating his PayPal account, which again I find to be rather lazy, is completely disingenuous. This was the website as has been for a while now. The quartering had zero ideas to revive the website. It was dead in the water. None of the writers could use their articles for reference if applying for other posts on other websites. It was gone. Which is not a statement that can be made with any confidence until and unless the owner of the site states that it is gone for good. It could well reappear tomorrow. This is an assumption made in order to paint a narrative. We love games. We love the community we had going. We are sorting out a website as we speak. We don't plan to ask people for hundreds of thousands of dollars to create a WordPress website. We are just very disappointed that we got conned out of money from the quartering. A subjective valuation, but it's one that I won't argue with. If that is their impression, then very well. All in all, we could have worked with Jeremy on EG's future, but he ignored us, so we will carve our own path. 2020 is going to be good for gaming, unless you're Intel, that is. Now in this, I take it to mean that the quartering did not listen to or respond to their feedback, nor was he willing to hand the site over to them. So they instead decided to create a copycat site with the same name and overall branding scheme in order to produce the same kind of content. There is a term for that, and it's called trademark infringement. Takes $200K, doesn't pay writers, closes the website we fans crowdfunded, community wants it back, he says no, they do it anyway. Threatens people. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Now, I produced content for Exclusively Games. I was paid. Top Hats and Champagne produced content for Exclusively Games. I know he was paid. I never once heard word one from any of the writers or YouTubers that created content for Exclusively Games that weren't paid for their work. Is it possible that articles were submitted and either ignored or not accepted and as such went unpaid? Sure. That is indeed possible, even highly likely, I would think. However, I would need to see actual evidence, or at the very least a writer that can state definitively that their work was published and they never received compensation for it. Although the argument of writers being paid versus not paid is ultimately superfluous to this entire argument. Now, I would be more than willing to cover any writers not being paid, but their payments or lack thereof in no way relates to these people infringing on the Exclusively Games trademark. I think it would be a very important piece of information to have, and I absolutely do not want to ignore this completely. Now, if people were not being paid, then that is a thing that concerns me greatly. And in relation to that, I've been informed that Sophia Narwitz has been collecting that exact information, and out of respect and desire to not stampede over her progress, I will wait for her and see what she comes up with in that regard. Now, in terms of the website being closed down, whether temporarily or permanently, paying writers and staff is where that money went. Money gets spent, after all, and those crowdfunding campaigns were never designed to keep the site running in perpetuity. It's not a magical, never-ending fountain, after all. Now, that money gets used, and if there's not enough money left to keep going, tough decisions have to be made. And to my mind, this is a frivolous and emotional argument that holds no clear basis in reality. The community wants it back. You mean the community wants control of the site. So I take this to mean that the Quartering denied this. It is his rights, after all. It is his property. His refusal does not invalidate his legal rights, nor does it provide the impersonators with any form of legal justification to simply take it and go. That is extremely unethical in all actuality, and it is not at all something that would engender faith and trust in your gaming news website. Also, in terms of the website being closed down, and the impersonators claiming permanence on this, that is not actually the case, as was shown by one of the Quartering's video editors that was sent this July 3rd. And I quote, "Hey man, as you know, EG is dead. What you might not know is YouTube is mass demonetizing commentary channels, and mine has been hit pretty hard, more yellow than ever. In addition, almost all of my sponsors have bailed. I'm going to need to take some time off from having staff. Your work has been top-notch, especially lately, and I would give you a glowing review anywhere else. I just don't have the money right now. Please send me an invoice for 1 month of pay, which I will pay as severance, and I really hope to be able to bring you back in the fall once things settle down with YouTube and all the sponsors." Now, this shows us that the site was going on hiatus, with every intention of it returning in the fall. The question still remains, however, if every writer received this same notice or not. It is stated as such that it was sent to everyone else as well, but that still remains to be seen, and I only mention it here as it is important in terms of common law trademark. But let's go back to the impersonator's Discord for a moment. The user Hobbs states, "Legally, Edgar is in the clear. I did a basic due diligence check." Edgar, I take it, is the person who started the impersonator site. "There's no Exclusively Games trademark registered in the US, so Jeremy does not own the name in any way, shape, or form. Registering the domain doesn't give you ownership of the associated name. And in terms of trademark law, as I've already said, this is not accurate. You do not need to register a mark in order to hold one. There is the concept of a common law mark, which is obtained when a company engages in commerce with that mark. This is not a simple concept to grasp, and there is a plethora of online information discussing this. It is quite readily available. Registering a mark enhances your trademark protections at the federal level, whereas a common law mark is valid for the region in which you conduct business. And that's where it can get a little sticky for many companies, as it tends to be geographically focused. The internet introduces a whole new dimension to this argument, however. And in terms of a US-based business branded as Exclusively Games that is online only and is a news website publishing gaming news, that would be their geographical location. And so when a US-based business branded as Exclusively Games that is also online only and is a news website that is, or at least will be, publishing gaming news, that would indeed be an infringement of the Exclusively Games trademark. As I said, while the discussion surrounding writer payments either being received or no is an important discussion to be had, it is completely immaterial as to the disposition of the trademark. And in this, it seems to me to be rather painfully evident that these people really don't know what sort of trouble they've potentially landed themselves in. Because trademark infringement does damage a brand by its very nature of creating brand confusion. And Exclusively Games, while it was a laudable goal even though its implementation and handling was decidedly inadequate, can ill afford an even more difficult road in terms of getting its feet under it. Also, I see that, while extremely vitriolic and spiteful in nature, the Impersonator exclusively game site also has a somewhat well-meaning ideal in terms of viewer information. However, their execution of it is an infringement of trademark and will almost certainly see them land in legal hot water and litigation as a result. Realistically, the Exclusively Games website needed, and still will if and when it returns, a managing editor and overall manager to run just the site. The quartering, with all of the other content that he produces and things that he does, simply does not have the time to provide either the website or the Exclusively Games YouTube channel the dedicated attention that they need to be able to flourish. But even that is beside the point. A trademark infringement is trademark infringement after all, and it should be dealt with. And there was no need, really, to attempt to usurp the Exclusively Games brand to begin with, outside of a rather blatant attempt to latch onto its pre-existing viewer base. I can understand wanting to create a spiritual successor, but that is something that can absolutely be done without trademark infringement. It could just as easily be done under a different name, but that's not what they wanted. They wanted to be Exclusively Games, in name as well as deed. But they don't own it, and they have no rights to it. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.